Resilience is the ability to bounce back from difficult life events, and we've all had our fair share this year, some major detours, but we're ready to get back on track. But how can you start a journey to the future if you're not even sure you've found the starting point? Join us for a special More Than a Chair podcast series on the roadmap to resilience, helping employees return to the workplace safely and confidently. Welcome to the More Than a Chair podcast by Business Furniture Choreo. I'm Amanda Clark. Thanks for joining us for a special More Than a Chair series all about the road to resilience. Today we have with us Business Furniture Choreo CEO Mary Beth Oakes and Choreo President Patty Clark to talk all about this plan, this need for a roadmap right now, as we've all had to face a pretty large detour for this year. So Mary Beth, I want to start with you. Why a roadmap? Why are companies in need of some kind of a strategy and a plan right now when things can feel a little chaotic?
Yeah, I think everybody right now is looking for a roadmap. And it's kind of like when you get in your car and you're going someplace where you've never been before. You know, most likely, most people just wouldn't start driving in their car without having a plan, right? Because especially if it's someplace you've never been, or if you know you have to go on a detour or you've been on a detour, you want to figure out, where am I going, right? So, you know, you're going to seek some guidance from MapQuest or Waze or whatever tool you use, right, to help to get you there. So this situation is pretty similar to that, right? I mean, this is a place where none of us have ever been before. And, you know, every organization has a different set of needs. Some organizations are just trying to figure out, is now the right time to bring people back to the workplace? Some organizations have decided, yes, it's the right time, but they just have to figure out how to do that. So, you know, really, it doesn't matter whether you're a small, medium, or large size company or what kind of industry you're in. It's important to have that kind of guidance just to make good decisions about where do you go from here, especially when you're dealing with people's emotions. And it really does go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And we know that beyond those basic needs of, you know, food and water, you know, the next basic need has to do with someone's feeling of safety and security. And so right now with the pandemic happening, you know, that sense of safety and security sometimes is not very strong, especially when you're trying to think about how to get people back to the workplace. So very important to consider that basic need for safety and security as you're building your plan. And having the plan will hopefully get you to that feeling of safety and security. So that's why that roadmap is so important. And then when you think about resilience, you know, to me means two different things. It means your ability to bounce back now, but it also means your ability to bounce back more quickly in the future. We know that once we get through this pandemic and there's a vaccine and we're moving forward at a pretty fast pace, we know that there'll be something else that comes up, right? You know, something else that we have not anticipated. So not only important to be resilient now and to bounce back, but also creating a work environment or a workspace, a culture in the future that allows you to bounce back very quickly.
Yeah, and I know our teams have worked really hard and just you and Patty and the Choreo team and kind of simplifying the process so it doesn't feel so overwhelming. We know that some employees are ready to get back to work. Others are still feeling pretty uneasy and lost. And it's all about leveraging data and this workplace research. Patty, talk to me about step one, the visioning sessions, the surveys. Why does it matter? And what are you offering to kind of ease in to figure out where people are and then we can meet them there?
I think that's a great question. So first of all, I wanted to say that I completely agree with Mary Beth on everything she just stated. I think it's so important. I loved her analogy, but I think it's so important to figure out where you are. So to pinpoint your location, because obviously everybody's probably going to be at a different location. Some people the same, different organizations. But I think it's so important because we all are at different points and our employees are at different points as well. So I think, you know, figuring out where you are. And I think it's something that you should be checking and going back and figuring out because your location's going to change along the way, right? Everything is so uncertain right now. And that's why it's so important. As Mary Beth mentioned, it's very emotional. So, you know, with this roadmap that we've created, as Amanda said, visioning session. So getting those aligned and understanding where they are and making sure they're aligned. Now that could change once again. So I think it's important for leaders to get back together and host a visioning session to understand where they are. And that could happen, biweekly or monthly to make sure we're all on the same page. We also offer a workplace performance survey. So that would go out to all employees. Once again, we want to hear their voice and understand where they are. As Amanda mentioned, we have some employees that are ready to come back to the office. Let's go, excited. And then we have other employees that just feel very uneasy and anxious and aren't real sure about going to the office. So we have to create that plan for them. And I think the survey really helps in understanding where employees are, and we have to meet them there. We also conduct focus groups. So after that survey piece, we get a little better understanding of where people are, and then we can host virtual focus groups to talk about some findings that we found in the survey. And then we can also do leadership interviews. So going back after that visioning session, understanding where leaders are, and then following up with them to dig in a little bit deeper and then try to align all those leaders on what those next steps are.
I love how easy it is.
It is easy. And I think sometimes with those assessments, I love what Patty said about really trying to understand the voice of the employee and the mindset of the employee, because, sometimes it's easy to look at this situation and say, okay, wow, technology is doing a great job of supporting us. And it is, for the most part, doing a good job of supporting us. But I think sometimes, unless you really try to dive in a little bit deeper, it's easy to make the assumption, okay, let's just do it this way forever. And this is going to be great. And I think it's really important at that point to really understand, what are the challenges. We know that there are some job functions that are really doing fine and may do fine working remotely forever. But there are a lot of job functions that will require a lot of collaboration, a lot of connectivity. And with your technology, that's harder to achieve. And so when you dive a little bit more deeply through the workplace survey or through focus groups, I think you really start to understand, where there are some cracks in the assumptions that we're making, right, about how people are doing. And the more access you have to that information as leaders, you really can make better decisions if you really have a good picture and you're not just trying to understand something at the surface level. So that's why we're such big believers in that whole pinpointing your location and doing a deep dive assessment.
Yes. So that's kind of step one. Let's pinpoint your location. So then once we get those results back and some of these interviews are done, then comes the rerouting directions part of it. Talk to me about step two. And I don't know if Mary Beth or Patty who wants to take this, but this is all about our team of designers really getting in there and mapping out the plan, evaluating the space, and making sure the teams know they're safe at work.
Well, let's say, that's a great question. So let's say that a company learns that, it really does make sense for them to start bringing people back. But we know that there's a lot of fear about, how dense a workplace may be. So for an example, our workplace team, our designers can come in and look at your current floor plan and give you ideas and strategies on how to, shall we say, de-densify the space, right? How can you make that space less densely populated so that employees have a feeling and have a sense that there's more room? How can we also take a look at collaboration spaces that employees want to use and make sure that there's enough space in those spaces so that you can maintain proper social distancing, whether that's 6 feet or someday it becomes 3 feet, whatever we're working with, how can we create those kinds of spaces where people feel safe? And in most situations, it really is taking a look at what you have and just reconfiguring and really rethinking the space. Now, in some situations, I know some organizations have gone ahead and they've ordered screens that add some extra protection. So there's not a right or wrong to this, but it's really, taking what you learn from your data collection and then really trying to apply that to your workspace and your floor plan so that you can demonstrate to your employees that you're really taking their feedback seriously and you're reworking your space in some way to make it safe and help the employees to feel confident in their return.
Yeah, I like that.
I think that's great, and completely, once again, agree with what you had to say on that, Mary Beth. I do think it is important to put it out there that when employees start coming back to the office, not that it's just a perception, but there are some other things that can be put in place. And we've learned that because Choreo's hosted quite a few roundtables with quite a few different organizations in the last 3 to 4 months. So once again, we can also make suggestions. And I think putting everything in place that you can, understanding that, whether it's temperature checks, it's a questionnaire walking in, it's wearing your mask 100% of the time, it's looking at your space and getting creative with that social distancing. So I think all those pieces are very important. And I think if you have those pieces in place, employees are going to feel much safer coming back to the office.
Yeah, and building your plan even to consider places like the restrooms, right? I mean, we know the restrooms tend to be a place that employees are concerned about, right? How do we keep social distancing happening in the restrooms? And how do you know how many people are in the restroom? So there are even strategies around that, we can help, organizations to think through. How do you manage those types of spots? So it's really just, taking your data and then applying that to your plan and thinking about that.
And then that leads us, go ahead.
I also think it's size of your organization, right? So, that determines a lot of different things when you're putting these certain pieces in place, understanding if you have 3,000 employees versus 50 employees. I still think it's very important to put those pieces in place, but it can make a difference. And as Mary Beth mentioned, you have to get creative when you start having 3, 4, 5,000 employees coming to, to, a couple different buildings. So it's really rethinking and getting very creative with what you need to put in place.
And this leads us right into our step 3, because we've got, step 1, we found their location. Step 2, we're rerouting those directions and finding the alternate routes. And then step 3, now it's time to share your location. And you could just picture yourself sending that little arrow, to the team. Okay, guys, here's how we're going to get there. How important is it for that careful communication plan so that the employees do feel like this is going to be meaningful and easy to follow when it comes to kind of these new changes and facing some of the changes ahead?
Well, as an organization, you just want to make sure that you're communicating in a way, right, that inspires confidence, right? Because I think that's what employees are looking for. They're looking for a confident voice so that they know that when they come back to the office, they are going to be safe, and safety has been a consideration. So as you're building that communication plan, really important to think about how you communicate things. And this is a great way also to get employees really engaged in the process. We are big believers in having change agents throughout the organization. And a change agent is someone that represents their team or their department. And these change agents will come together with the purpose, right, of developing protocols for how employees will work in the space. Like what Patty was talking about, like masks. How are we going to wear masks? Right now there are mandates in place where masks are mandatory, but what if that changes, right? So what are the protocols for how we're going to use social spaces? What are the protocols for collaboration spaces, individual spaces, wearing masks? Can you eat at your desk? Can you not eat at your desk? I mean, lots of things to think through. And this is a great opportunity for the leadership team of any organization to give other employees a chance to really get involved in this process and help to define those protocols. So we're big believers in that. And as leaders, then you can build that whole communication plan about, when do you want to leverage those change agents, and what are the touch points when you need to talk to all the employees, and how will you create like a steady cadence of communication so that employees understand the why and how they will be impacted, how they will be supported. So really important to have that strong, robust communication plan in place that has a steady cadence to it so that employees always have information. And like Patty has said about getting creative, I mean, you have to really get creative in this part of the process too, recognizing that you may have some employees that are still working remotely and some employees that are going to be in person. So how do you blend those two groups of employees? So lots of things to think about. But the good news is this is a great place for the leadership team to drive the communication plan, but with lots of input from the employees, lots of the employee voice and employee support in terms of guiding that change and guiding that communication.
So the only thing I want to piggyback on that is even prior to these uncertain times, Choreo has always believed that communication is probably one of the most important pieces in our process. employees need to be knowledgeable, understand what's happening. As Mary Beth mentioned, what that big why are we doing this? How are we going to do this? And I think during these uncertain times, it's even more important to communicate. I hate to say this, but I almost think sometimes we need to over communicate at this point and where we are, right? Because everything's changing, as we all know. Every week, it feels like something changes. So I think that communication piece, whether it's through our change agents, manager workshops, I also think it's very important with those manager workshops that they understand that why and where leaders are at this point, understand why they're doing what they're doing. And then those managers even touching base with their team members individually. Because I think the biggest part, what we talk about with our change agents, it's about listening to what people have to say. And I think right now, more than ever, that's so important to hear what people have to say. Because sometimes it's just about, I hate to say this, but it's about venting. They're stressed out. They're having anxiety, right? So it's about listening to what they have to say.
Is this where the town hall comes in? The town halls kind of get that conversation started. What is it? What does a town hall look like if you've never been to one?
So a town hall meeting is just really a chance, and you can do this virtually. You can do this in person. Probably a lot of organizations are doing these kinds of things virtually now just because of the size of the employee group. But it's really just a chance to talk about what is the big why for whatever change is happening. So let's say your change is you're starting to bring employees back to the workplace, right? So what's the big why for behind them? Why are we making that change? Why are we making that shift? How will this impact all of the employees? And then also, how will you be supported, right? So what types of tools will be there to support you? What types of resources will you have to support you as you make this change? And to Patty's point, the more people know, the more they can start to embrace a change and align with that change. I was talking recently to a client, and they were telling me that it was very confusing. And they knew at that point they really had to start thinking about how they were going to communicate. So we started talking about that communication plan. And this client basically said, yeah, everybody is in a tailspin right now because nobody feels like they know what's going on. They don't know what the timeline is for the return to the workplace. They don't know what to expect when they get back to the workplace. How should they be preparing? What do they need to know? And from what she was describing, it did sound pretty awful, like just a tailspin. And so something like a town hall can really start that communication process. And then, of course, there's lots of other pieces to it, but that's one piece that you can start with just so everybody has a good understanding of the timeline and the why and the what and the how. And if you can give people that information, it doesn't take away all of their anxiety about the change, but at least it makes them feel better and like they have a window into what's happening.
Yeah. And it's a consistent message, right? So hopefully, right now we're doing these virtually. So, but important for employees to hear that same message because we know how all those rumors start. Well, I heard this and I heard that, and then people start to tailspin. So when we launch a town hall, usually at the beginning of a project, it's really about everybody being in that same room. So we have a consistent message. And then I think right now, while it's virtual, what I think is actually great is that we can record these town halls. So if there's people that didn't attend the virtual town hall, we can send that out and they can actually listen to that recording and understand and get that consistent message. We normally do a town hall at the beginning of a project, and I don't know if it's necessarily called a town hall, but I do every single time because I'm recommending that people do more than one town hall, or maybe it's just open discussion, monthly because things are changing so rapidly. I think that's where it becomes confusing and people get overwhelmed because leaders are making decisions and could be changing those decisions weekly, right? So employees need to be updated on that. And I think there's a variety of ways you can do it, whether you call it a town hall. I definitely think leaders need to launch a town hall at the beginning. And then I think they just need to continue to follow up. So everybody's understanding where they are and those rumors aren't starting about, I heard this, I heard that, what's happening. So I think it's very important to get everybody on the same page and a consistent message.
Yeah. I know our teams at Business Furniture and Choreo, we've been meeting weekly. We're considering now shifting to every other week, but really the purpose of those meetings is kind of like an ongoing town hall type of a dialogue, right? So as things come up with our return to work strategy or any other things that come up as a result of the pandemic, it's just really a great opportunity for everybody to hear the same thing. And we keep them pretty short, maybe 30 minutes, and then we do some breakout sessions afterwards. But it's just a very intentional way to make sure that every employee feels like they're getting the latest information and they have a chance to ask questions. There's a chance for discussion through the breakout sessions. And it's just really a way to promote strong two-way communication with your team.
So that kind of leads us to the next step. So the Choreo teams helped pinpoint your location. We've reworked those directions. Now we've shared the location with this communication plan and these opportunities for town halls. Now it's time we're arriving at your destination, kind of that you are here feeling. The destination is in sight. How can we help support this change? And I know we have the Move Genius support desk. We're doing virtual and in person, just helping your team the days ahead to be sure that they're prepared through training and support. What does that step of the roadmap to resilience look like?
Well, really, this step would be, providing opportunities for training and education for employees as they return to the workplace. So let's say, for an example, you have change agents that have created new protocols for how employees would be expected to work and engage with each other once they return to the office. So it would be very important to have sessions, and these can be virtual, where every employee has a chance to really learn and understand and embrace those new protocols. There could also be new technology that you're incorporating into your space, right, to better support a more seamless type of interaction between remote workers and employees that are in person. So there could be that need for training on those types of technology tools. So if you're adding new technology tools, really anything that's new or different, giving an employee a chance to have training around that's very helpful. And that same type of training is often helpful for leaders, right? Because, if you have employees that are going to be working remotely, but you also have employees that are going to be working in the space more often, as leaders, there may be training that's required to help you to feel confident in leading your team in a different way. Now that you have some people coming back, but maybe not everybody, or maybe everybody's coming back, but you're going to be working in a different way around your space or working in different locations around your space that promote safety. So it's just a great chance too for leaders to have an opportunity for some training around what will be different for them in terms of how they lead their team.
I don't know if I have a lot to add to that because I think you said that perfectly, Mary Beth.
And then the on-site support, right? Patty, why don't you?
That's what I wanted to ask.
That? Why is that on-site support, whether it's virtual or whether it's in person, why do you think that's important now more than ever?
Well, I think people need to feel supported, and that's probably, once again, outside of the communication plan, one of the other pieces that are extremely important, because even prior to these uncertain times, employees would move in, they needed to understand and have a place to go. So, right, we all have our day job. So basically, it's the Choreo team taking that issue and helping resolve that. And I think it's the same for during these times. So as people phase back into the office, as Mary Beth mentioned, some people are going back now and some people are still working at home. So it's supporting them and understanding how they can come together and collaborate, even if half of the employees or a quarter of the employees aren't coming back to the office right now. We normally do that in person. So we usually move in, even if it's by phases for a week to support employees. Very valuable touch point. Now we're looking at doing that virtually, but with employees phasing back in, we could do both, really. We could be there in person and we can do virtual help with employees that are still working remotely. And I think a big part of that is understanding even the etiquette between remote workers and workers that are back in the office. Very valuable service, probably one of the most valuable services we offer.
Yeah. Well, what about the you've done the work now? Okay, we've walked us all the way almost through to the whole roadmap. We're making our way through it. But you always know that there's some unexpected detours that can always happen. How do you make sure that you are still on the fastest route? And what is the importance of some of the services offered with this step, the culture committees, the manager workshops, this leadership series? It's kind of at the end of the roadmap, but it's a very important step.
It's keeping a focus on the culture of your organization, right? We know that a strong culture has a big impact on your business results. And we know that to keep a culture strong, leaders have to be really engaged and aligned. And so as you return to the workplace and as the world keeps changing, topics will keep evolving, right? So it's important to keep your leaders involved in that dialogue about what happens next with your organization, your organization's culture. It's also really important to keep getting the employee's voice. So we recommend, having some type of a culture council or a homeowners association, quote unquote, just to keep that group of employees together to provide feedback about how things are going, what's working really well and what needs to be tweaked. How can we keep making that workplace better? Because we know, right, that your workplace, that those spaces, they shape your behaviors, and the behaviors shape the culture, and the culture drives the organizational success. So it's just important to keep tweaking, refining, listening, and being willing to keep evolving your space solution, your technology solution. We have to recognize that working from home most likely will never go away. And that's probably a good thing, right? To have working from home being just a part of the ecosystem of different spaces that employees can choose from. But we know with that comes some complexity, right, on how you keep it all connected. And our best advice is always just to be really listening, making sure leaders are involved in those conversations and that they're aligned on what you want to do as a company, and then making sure that employees have a voice in that too. So just tweaking, refining, and always trying to make it better, right?
I would agree on the culture committees. I think culture is so important. We've all worked so hard to create culture in our work environments today. And with people working remotely, we have a lot of people at home. I think that's hard to keep that connection going in that culture. Sometimes that will break that down. I would probably say we have the majority of people working remotely right now, and that culture piece is difficult. So I think putting that culture committee or the neighborhood association, if you will, in place to keep people connected is probably, also a very important piece as we move forward. We don't want to disconnect. So keeping people connected to keep that culture going is key.
And so if you think about the whole roadmap, if you think about that whole roadmap to resilience, we wanted to create a framework that was relatively simple and easy to follow, knowing that we're in such a difficult time right now, right? So how can we make this as simple and straightforward and easy as possible? Now I say easy kind of quote unquote, right? Nothing about right now is necessarily easy, but having a framework definitely can help to guide you through that journey and to feel like, you're going to get to your destination, right? And have clarity about how to get to that destination. So that's really what that roadmap is all about, just providing clarity and direction and to help you feel like you have some guidelines on how to get to where you're going.
Yeah, it's an easy process to follow, which is what I think is going to be so helpful with this whole roadmap to resilience, as so many people are facing different routes and different forms of stress right now. And this is kind of like, okay, we can walk through this. And that's really what resilience is. It's the ability to recover and start adapting and moving forward. So there has to be a part of that feels a little exciting for you, Mary Beth.
It is exciting. I mean, I guess I feel like in this whole process as a leader, you have to maintain positivity and optimism because that's what your team is looking for, right? They want to know that as an organization, we're going to be able to keep moving forward despite the challenges we're facing. And so I think having a roadmap is great for any leader to give them confidence that you can get to where you need to be. You can get to where you're going. You can achieve your business results, even when a detour is thrown in, right? You can still get there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
I think even if you have those detours, I think it's important to be open-minded and know that sometimes you might have to take a step back and look at that again. So that's where I think this roadmap to resilience is extremely important so that you can pinpoint, like I mentioned, you may step back a little bit, but always looking at where you are on that roadmap, sometimes having to go back, look at it again, but looking at the roadmap as a whole to guide you through this process.
Yeah. Thank you guys for explaining this and helping us break it all down. For all of our listeners, we do have all the steps right on the Business Furniture website at businessfurniture.net on the homepage, where we can quickly connect you with the team of experts here at Choreo to figure out just pinpointing your location and getting you started and getting us all started back on the road to resilience. So thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. For now, this is the More Than a Chair podcast. Resilience, the ability to recover from difficult experiences and setbacks. At Business Furniture Choreo, we know the road to resilience takes all of us. Our teams are reconfiguring workspaces to create personal boundaries without compromising design. Our warehouses are open to store your furniture, to keep your people safe.
Business Furniture and Choreo are on the road to resilience with you. We will meet you where you are, and together we will get results.